Thank you very much for your introduction. You must know it's a risk to invite a former finance minister. 40 years ago, I heard Mr. Parkinson, Professor Parkinson, in Innsbruck, and he told from a former finance minister who had to make a speech, and he tried to get a draft from a ghostwriter, and he got the draft and made the speech, and the ghostwriter came and wanted to have his fee, and asked, was everything okay? And the former minister said everything was fine, but the speech had one problem. It took 2 hours, so we had promised it only 1 hour. And then the ghostwriter said, but it's not my fault, Excellency, but I gave you 2 copies. Therefore, you can be sure I have only 1 copy here. Second, till yesterday, I was prepared to do it in German, but now I heard the conference is in English, and now I try to do my very best. I think 15 years ago, I had a dinner with Alan Greenspan, and suddenly he laughed and said, Theo, when I met you first 6 years ago, your English was not existent, but your accent was excellent. Maybe it was a mixture between Henry Kissinger and Franz Josef Strauss. But another question, Euro, I think you mentioned a disaster. Yes. No, I cannot agree. I think we have many advantages in Germany from the common currency, but that's not the theme today. But you are right. I proposed the name because I had to realize écu that was not possible in Germany. Absolutely not. Shilling also not. Lira, I don't want to take it. And then I tried. I said maybe Franken. That would be a fine name, Franken. Why not? I think acceptable for French and, of course, Switzerland. And in Nuremberg, no problems about this. But then I had not the agreement from Felipe González. He said, Theo, it's not possible because it would be named Franco in Spain, and we don't like to take this name. And then I made the proposal Euro. And some years ago, my son asked me, Dad, is it right that you are proposed the name, that you are the father of the Euro? I said, no, there are many fathers and mothers, but I did a little part. And he said, but I don't want to be brother of the Euro. Okay, but now, I remember in '97, we had a big discussion in the government when we discussed the budget at that time about useful payments. Useful payments that were payments for bribery in the export business, which could be deducted against tax. And in '85, the highest court in Germany, Bundesgerichtshof, said you have to accept this because we have quite other situations in Africa, some other countries in Asia and wherever, and therefore it's necessary to do that, to have useful payments and to support bribery in the business, in the export business. At that time, Chancellor Kohl said, I think we have to change this. And I agreed. And at that time, we changed this, and also the later governments did this. But I keep hearing the assertion, you have to pay to get anywhere in business in some countries. And 2 years ago, 3 years ago, in the Handelsblatt, there was an interview with a German businessman, a very important businessman. He took part in the in the trips from Bundespräsident, Chancellor, Foreign Minister, and so on. And he said in an interview that he had already paid a bribe more than once. And he went on to claim that the fight against corruption and process of establishing compliance in companies is pure hypocrisy, and that he only knew companies for whom contracts were more important than the compliance department. And I think this man was not alone. At that time, I made the proposal as monitor from Siemens to make a public discussion in Berlin with politicians and businessmen and representatives of the associations. And together with the new CEO from Siemens, at that time he was responsible for finance, Joe Kaeser, and we invited, I think, 150 people. 9 people were ready to come about the theme, about the issue compliance in Germany and for the world. Why? I think the location was okay. The Parlamentarische Gesellschaft, now there are the negotiations between, for the government, between Social Democrats and Greens and so on, and also eating is no problem. No, I think there was a hesitation because you could be asked, what do you think about your situation 10 years ago in your company as politician? Why did you not realize the theme stronger before? And therefore I think they wanted to have a discussion about this. Now I think that has changed. But unfortunately, it's not an isolated view. Back in 1997, the federal cabinet was discussing changes in the way useful expenditure is dealt with. And we changed it in 1998, and from 1999 onwards, bribery in international business became a punishable offense in Germany. And I think that was very important. There is a common misconception. Compliance is corporate ethics claptrap. That one responsible man in a big company in Germany. And compliance departments cause unproductive workplaces. And 600 compliance officers who are working for Siemens around the world are, at this point, unproductive workplaces. That was a mentioning only 4 years ago. I think also this has changed. What is a monitor? 5 years ago, I got a call from Mr. Kromme. He wanted to see me. And then he said, maybe we are possible at the end of the year to have a settlement with SEC and DOJ, and part of the settlement could be to establish a monitor. Would you be ready to do this? I was very astonished and asked him, takes it many times? He said, no, can be sure it's not very hard to do that. And then I agreed, but that was wrong. But I think he didn't know this, and I didn't know this at that time. And it was astonishing. The American authorities, SEC and DOJ, asked also the prosecutors from Munich, who were responsible for the problem in Siemens, what do you think about Theo Waigel? And they said, nothing against, because his first working place after his education was prosecutor in Munich, and therefore he's a man from us and for us, and therefore we had no problems together. What is a monitor? The monitor tests the compliance system i.e. tone from the top and tone from the middle, the financial controls, and the compliance programs. And my person was the first monitor not coming from the American system, not from FBI or American Council. The remit was not to look for misconduct for employees in the past. That was finished. The remit is to test and assess systems adopted now and in the future. And at Siemens, focus also placed on collective action initiatives, very important, I think, for the future. Embodiment of self-cleaning in public procurement law in Germany and at EU level, and support in process of ratifying the UNCAC, United Nations Convention Against Corruption. And that, I think, is or was a disaster in Germany, because every country in Europe, nearly every country, has ratified it, but not Germany. We signed it 10 years ago, but there was a resistance in the parliament because the problem of the free mandate of members. And I did a lot the last years to convince my former colleagues to do that. And now I think in the new period we have a real chance in the parliament for ratification. I have got the support from the CSU, and I also hope that Chancellor Merkel and Bundestagspräsident Lammert, who were in favor of this, do that. Because to be on the side of North Korea, Barbados, Bhutan, Guinea, Myanmar, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, Chad and the Czech Republic, I think that are not, I want to name it, but it's not good to be in this situation and not on the side of the most other countries. Now, 4 years as compliance monitor, a short review. We had more than 1,500 individual meetings around the world. I visited 20 countries. In further 19 countries, we made walkthroughs, and approximately 51,000 documents were collated and analyzed. And I think we had a very good team, project team from Siemens, and then an American law firm, German law firm, and the internal audit from Siemens, which worked at this point only for us, not for the Siemens government, but only for me. And we had special situations, because I was very interested to see how are financial controls working in times of crisis, Arab Spring. Is it possible then to fulfill the problems of compliance and so on? And at last time, it was very important for us to see, is compliance sustainable? Is there a situation and a system of sustainability of compliance system at Siemens, and the transition from a compliance system observed by a monitor to a compliance system without any support, and ensuring the effectiveness of the Siemens internal assurance provider, internal audit, risk controlling, compliance department, and so on. Prerequisites for success are ability to access senior management and the supervisory board at any time. And I had the full support of the management of Siemens. That's absolutely necessary, from the supervisory board and the other board. Access to all documents and continual availability of internal resources and a good team, I mentioned this. Even before the monitoring began, a large number of measures had been introduced at Siemens to increase responsibility and transparency in the company. There was a reorganization of corporate structure with clear decision-making lines and responsibilities. Introduction of the CEO principle, one business, one boss. Board-level responsibility for legal compliance with Peter Solmsen, a former manager coming from GE from the United States. And the expansion of compliance organization to over 600 employees. In 2006, we had 80. And I think they are working well. And it's very important to say they must have the best qualification. Not the end of their career, but the possibility from compliance to go to another work in the company, research or whatever. It must be a very attractive situation for the employees to go and to be ready to go to the compliance office. And introduction of an extensive anti-corruption program involving activities such as training, recording and reporting of suspicious cases and investigations. And you must have a new management culture. And I think that's more important than every organization. And Siemens is now a different company. And there is a management culture, clear messages and announcements from the top level of management to middle management, the tone from the top and the tone from the middle. And I think the best sentence and the best message is what Peter Löscher said: only clean business is Siemens business, everywhere and at all times. Only clean business is Siemens business. And that was a clear message to all persons in Siemens around the world. And you have the situation, there are Siemens representations in 190 countries in the world. In the prestigious Dow Jones Sustainability Index, Siemens was ranked top of the compliance category index for the 4th time running in 2011. A few concrete examples illustrating the transformation at Siemens. The newly introduced tools and controls are increasingly seen as a means of support and help, as guidelines, rather than a hindrance, as they in former time would be mentioned. And it is important to know how to handle crisis scenarios in difficult situations, e.g. problems with customs and border clearance in risk countries. The employees involved and at risk must immediately seek assistance from the company and political institutions such as the Embassy and Foreign Office. During the unrest in the Middle East and North America, Arab Spring, there were no compliance infringement despite crisis situation. It is possible. Bribery does not pay. The cost of paying penalties and cleaning up is high. At Siemens, more than 2.2 billion euros. You must see, 2.2 billion euros. Contracts that are awarded through bribery are often loss-making. Everyone wants a share of profit gained through unfair means. Those who engineered the deal and those who sanctioned it on the other side. Corruption goes against any form of sustainability. It undermines fair competition, which we all rely on. There is no bribe money for researching and developing new, more competitive products. Some sectors, the Siemens company, would exist now if the money for bribery would be taken to do more for research, to do more for development, and so on. The claim of integrity is the responsibility of us all. We all have to pay for the huge financial and social cost of corruption. The World Bank estimates that each year at least $1 billion is spent on bribes. That is twice the gross national product of the whole of Africa. A study carried out at the University of Linz, I don't know why they are very experienced in this point, but I read, they have a report from 2012, assessed the annual loss generated by corruption in the business community in Germany at 250 billion euros. Very huge, very big. But one company on its own will not change the world for the better. The fight against corruption can only succeed if we work together as an alliance, as a cartel of the good. In this process, policymakers play an important role in the providing sector. And if you make collective action, you have to cooperate with other companies, with companies who deal in the same sector, with are competitors, of course. But if you feel, if you get notice, if you get information that there is something wrong, I think the CEO from a company has to inform his colleague in the other company. He has to say, if there is something wrong, what can we do against this? That is, I think, the only possibility in such a situation to fight against corruption worldwide. And there are some successful situations. In India, we have over 40 integrity pacts. In China, we have a mutual provision of information among competitors about suspected cases. In Brazil, there is a promotion of a project to ensure transparency and integrity in the bidding process in the run-up to the Football World Cup 2014 and Olympic Games 2016. And in Russia, there are compliance pact with around 80 companies. And we have support for institutions in fighting corruption in risk countries. I saw that in Egypt and in other countries. There are young people in some ministries, sometimes the infrastructure ministry, sometimes the law ministry, which are working very good, but they need more support, they need more help to find more recommendation in their own government. I think to help them, to support them is very, very important. However, compliance means far more than just adhering to rules and laws. Compliance is a moral obligation on an equal footing with sustainable value creation. Business was not lost as a result of ensuring compliance at Siemens. On the contrary, compliance is even a competitive advantage. And the situation in Siemens, after the scandal, after having a compliance system, was better than before. Maybe you lose some business, maybe, but on the whole, it is an advantage, it is a competitive advantage for Siemens, and I think the same result I read about Daimler and other companies. 1 year ago, I had a very interesting discussion in St. Petersburg, in Russia. And a young woman working for Siemens said, it's wonderful for me to work in a safe haven. If there is a doubt, if there comes someone to me and want to try me, to win and to make bribery or so on, I can say no. Siemens is not allowed and I will not do this. And that's very good for me to see that, to feel that and to react so. In his categorical imperative, Immanuel Kant, and I visited his funeral 1 year ago, asked to act as if the maxim of our action were to become a universal law of nature by our will. And that rules out bribery. Because if only one is doing that, it cannot be existing rule for all. In contrast, Machiavelli believed that it is very disadvantageous to always be fair or pious, true, human, good-feeling, but great benefit can be obtained from appearing to be fair. There are still many in government and society who set store by this maxim. I was very glad to read the title of Władysław Bartoszewski's book, the former foreign minister from Poland and a very great man resisting against the Nazi, resisting against communism. And the headline of his book was, "It is worth being decent." In Germany, es lohnt sich, anständig zu sein. And that is, I think, the best interpretation of Kant or Hans Küng or every very important persons which are writing or teaching us ethics also in the politician situation or in the business situation. Thank you very much. So.
Yeah, thank you very much to you, Herr Dr. Waigel. That was very instructive. And now we would like to take the opportunity to discuss with you a couple of the insights that you may not yet have mentioned, or we would also like to understand from you your take on how a company can really become and stay clean, using your words, and in our words, how a company can really truly implement principles of integrity and still win business and still be profitable. We would like to resolve that contradiction that is often maintained, that ethical behavior would be bad in a business sense. And you just stated it pays to be decent, and that is what we would like to hear more about. May I offer the word to you already, or are you still gathering your thoughts? If that is the case, I would like to ask you the first question. When you came into Siemens, it was kind of a mandatory situation. Siemens didn't have a chance to say no to your role. I would like to understand what was actually your role in the company? What did management expect from you? Did you come as a controller, or did you come as an advisor, or what was the mixture?
I think it was a mixture. I said to Mr. Gromme, and I mentioned to SEC and DOJ when I had my first meeting with them, I am absolutely independent. I have been independent all my life. And I said to them at that time, now I am 70, I don't want to change this situation. And you must, I can say you, if there are problems between us, I will finish my job at once, at once. And if you are not satisfied with me, please tell me, and I will do the same. It's the same I said to SEC. I said, I have not a mandate from you as in German called Treuhänder. I don't know now the American. Okay, I'm not, that must be clear. And I'm absolutely independent also from the American authorities. And they agreed, said, okay. And I worked absolutely independent. I had a very good team. I had access to all what I needed. And I had the full support from the company, from the supervisory board, and also from the board. I need all human reserves I needed. There was an excellent cooperation between us. And maybe one advantage for me was to know the German situation. I had, before that, no relation to Siemens. The normal relation as a politician, as finance minister in former time, but not as lawyer, no business contact. And I think that was very, very good for me. And at the end, every year, I had 2 discussions with the American authorities. First in January about our working plan, and then at the end of the year, our report, what we did. And they were satisfied with all what we did. There was no criticism. They were said, okay, go away in this way. And therefore, it was a wonderful work, very independent, and nobody tried to convince me to do it in another way.
Michael, and then Jim. Yeah, quick question. You said even in terms of results, it was a great experience for you, but
yeah.
Just recently, I don't know exactly how many months ago, but there was a big problem in the CEO turnover. Joe Kaeser was following Peter Löscher, and it seemed like the problem being the return on investment during the time of CEO Peter Löscher. So do you think there's any correlation with him becoming the new CEO for a new company with a new culture and now being forced out for whatever we are sort of thinking cynically, performance reasons?
The change in the rule of the CEO has nothing to do with compliance. Joe Kaeser absolutely assisted and supported us in a very sufficient and in a very important way. And there are other problems. The policy, Siemens, some very ambitious targets they made. I will not discuss about this, but there is no relation to compliance. There is no change in the policy of compliance or rules. In this point, in this issue, nothing has changed. And you have to see the profitability of Siemens after the settlement was excellent. They had problems the last 2 years with the targets and with the policy, with some problems they had with energy and the problems with the wind and so on. There are technical problems, but not problems with compliance.
My name is Jan. I worked in industry and moved into university, was primed in Bavaria, and since '94 I'm here director of medical virology. I would like to bring up the idea of controls or instruments, tools, sentinels internally before it comes to the scandal. For me, it is really chin clear that corruption is much more existing in universities than in industry. I prefer the word nepotism. A lot of money who comes from German Science Foundation or other foundations or BMBF goes more than 50% by personal relationships than by excellence or by innovative ideas or whatsoever. What are the instruments in industry? I know they exist, but I don't know that they exist, or I never saw it at university. I know it in England, MRC. They have instruments to avoid corruption or nepotism or Seilschaften and NIH grants. They have instruments. In Germany, whenever I wrote letters to the president of the DFG, I even didn't get a response. So my question is concerning to get an installation of instruments that it does not come up to the point of real corruption and the scandals. And why we don't work more on these instruments in Germany?
I'm not a specialist, of course, for the public sector. That's right. I think I have a good experience in business, in industry. I've seen it. I had a lot of discussions also with other monitors, with Louis Freeh, working for Daimler, and of course discussions with responsible people, Thyssen and so on. But I had no contact with universities or schools. And you are right, also in the public sector there is a big challenge, first time, 1 year ago, the Minister for Transport and Building, Peter Ramsauer, he made a conference in his ministry about compliance, because there is a relationship between private sector and the public sector for streets and traffic and railway and so on. Okay. At this point, he was the first who tried such an experience. Okay. But you are right, okay. We need also such experiences and advice also for the public sector. Yesterday, I was informed that the Staatsbibliothek in Munich, what's in English, state library, the big library, they now have a compliance officer. They have established a compliance officer who is now trying to do something. And you are right, the university, also big schools, are a big enterprise to do that. Quite another experience. We had the last year in the Bavarian policy some problems with members of the parliament who engaged their wife or their children or other people's relatives to work for them. And it was the only parliament in Germany and in Europe where it was possible for some time now. They have finished it. And the chairman of the Christian Social Union asked me to create some rules for the party, and now I'm doing that. I'm doing that, and I think at the end of the year we will make some proposals. I think it's a problem not only for the private sector, it's a problem for the public sector and for the policy sector, but I'm not a specialist in this point.
Okay, I would like to chip in here a little bit, because Siemens is a very interesting example in that respect as well. And I don't want if you could elaborate on what Siemens did in order to change the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was your question? Yeah. Could you?
Yeah. Okay. First, there was a change in the board. Totally change in the board. Mr. Löscher came, Peter Solmsen came, and other people came. And it was a radical reform coming from the supervisory board. The supervisory board did this. Mr. Kromme, Mr. Ackermann, and Mr. Huber coming from the unions. That were the three representatives who took this in their targets. And then they catched a very experienced man to build up a new compliance system. They had an old compliance system, but it didn't function. It was not realized. It was not. They had formulas, but they were not existing in the real policy. And then they built up a new compliance system with 600 official working compliance officers. Before that, they had 60, but not real working. Yeah. And they took tools and they forced everyone to take part in the trainings, in the schools to enforce this point. And it's very important to do that also, not only in Germany, in Munich and in Erlangen, but to do it in all countries. In all countries, the same regulation, the same point. And to educate the people very well. And to say to them, there is null tolerance, null tolerance. And I have met very interesting compliance officers. In a South American country, there is a compliance officer who told to the CEO, if you will give the governor of this country a picture, you cannot do that. That's too expensive. You have to take a picture 1/3 of the worth of this. No, you cannot do that. Or in Turkey, there is a compliance officer who has introduced a very interesting experiment. And if you, in the morning, if you will open your computer, you must first answer a question about compliance. It's not very hard, but of course you have to do that. And I think that are very interesting practices you can take, and you can see there is a new value. Mr. Hiesinger, who is now working on Thyssen, Group Thyssen, in former time he was a member of the board at Siemens. I was very impressed. He made a speech to his important people, and he said, please, do not take part in briberies and so on, or in corruption. Please don't do it in the interest of the company. But that's not the important thing. I beg you not to do it in your interest, the interest of your wife and your children. You must see for the rest of your life, you can be pressed from other persons. And you should be independent and clean for your life. And that, I think, is a new value. That is a new situation. That is an ethical response.
Yes. Can I see the questions that are currently wanted to be asked? One? Okay, because I also have a regard of the time, but your name, please?
Matthias Larsen. My name is Matthias Larsen. All the things you mentioned, for me, sounds a bit like healing symptoms in a system I live which is the problem. For me, the system, the Zinseszins system and the finance system we live in is the problem. And that creates corrupt people, the system, and not firms like Siemens. Siemens, the people at Siemens can be more, can have moral, but the system can't have moral, and that's the problem, I think. And I want to ask why nobody wants to talk about this. In political discussions, no one mentioned this, that we can change the system. We can have another system, or we should think about another system. That's my question. Why isn't there a big discussion about a new system, a whole new finance system?
I don't think we need a new system. Of course, I'm in favor of a better system. Why not? And we can correct something. But I think it's not the system. We have a social market system. I think it's a function. It's a good system. But the free market creates not values from itself. No. You have to take values from another star, from another thinking, from the philosophy, from theology, and from ethical responses, as Tübingen is doing that, or many others. One, maybe the name of Bockenförde tell you something. He was a very interesting professor for law and, of course, member of the Constitutional Court of Germany. And I think 10 or 20 years ago, he said, democracy is not able to create from the system values. You have to take it from another world, from the religion world, from philosophy, also. And that's, I think, the same situation we have in the economy. The economy creates not values. You have to take it from another world, from philosophers, from religion thinkers, as Hans Küng or others.
Any more responses, questions, or remarks? Then I would like to ask you sort of a last the microphone, and I don't use it. I would like to use a sort of a last question. For Siemens, it was quite a sea change to go for a business that at some time tolerated corruption to a business that is now absolutely squeaky clean. And when you entered the company, a lot of the cleanup was already being done. Like the top leadership level has already disappeared in the company, but the people who have actually conducted the business, the sales managers, the sales engineers, they have still been with the company and they still have sales targets. What would you say is going on in their minds? How do they integrate the new value system, the new tone from the top?
Yeah, that's a very interesting and a very important question, of course. And I always, when I visited these people all over the world, I thought sometimes, what was your rule 10 years before? What thought you at that time and now? And I think it was good from something to hear, from what is to hear, we made mistakes in former time. But now we have changed. We know it. We cannot do it. Now we have to change, and not only while the fate of Siemens is connected with it, because we know it was wrong. And I think then you have to accept such a situation and such a feeling. But it's absolutely necessary also to react as quickly as you know and as you are informed that there are problems. A very successful businessmen of Siemens on another continent as Europe. Very successful. The best men they had. 2 years ago, we were informed he also was connected in former time with black accountancies and accounts and so on. And Peter Solmsen reacted at once. Within 1 hour, he was hired. And he was the best man they had 1 year before. Because there is no other way. And because if you, in such a situation, are not consequent, you cannot expect from other people that they fulfill that. Or another case, 2 or 3 days before I had a meeting with SEC at DOJ, I was informed they had a problem in Kuwait. 3 or 4 people from Siemens, in a very stupid way, tried to give briberies to states people to get a very big business. And of course, the government was informed and how to react. I thought, I was very unhappy because some days before the meeting, and I wanted to say, I wanted to see how is the reaction of the American authorities. And they were very reluctant. They said, 400,000 people are working for Siemens. They are not all holy people. And of course they will be sinners. It's for us, it's important, how are you reacting to this? How do you solve the problems? And there was also clear punishing them, firing them, to inform the authorities in Kuwait and the prosecutor in Munich and so on. And therefore we had no problems. And that, I think, is very interesting to see how is the reaction, what are the consequences, and if you do that, then I think you have a good system. But you must be absolutely, but we have to see we are not perfect. Nobody is perfect, no company is perfect, but you have to react and to create a system where the consequences are clear.
So, last chance. Any more remarks or questions? That is not the case. Okay. Then I thank you for coming here, for your attention, for supporting our conference. And I thank you again very much for the insights that you have allowed us. And thank you very much for what you have done for Siemens, because Siemens is also a very important company.
Okay.